Right, so good afternoon, folks, or good morning if you are somewhere further afield. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Louise Gardner. I'm the Managing Director of Pledge Consulting. We're here in a wintry and lockdown Sydney this afternoon. Our business is all about helping organisations do PMO right and supporting organisations right across Australia with project delivery support, essentially. Today, albeit in a little bit delayed, I've got the great pleasure of welcoming back to our webinars Stuart Easton. Stuart's the CEO and co-founder of Transparent Choice. Stuart is a renowned expert in prioritisation. He's taught at the University of Oxford and is a speaker and blogger on the topic of portfolio management and decision making. So today, Stuart's going to talk to us about what exactly executives want from PMOs. And I'm expecting quite a quirky take on the subject. So without further ado, Stuart, welcome, and over to you.
Thanks, Louise. We always seem to do this at holiday time for us. I think last time we did one of these sessions, I literally drove down from the Highlands of Scotland the night before.
Yeah.
And so everybody was kind of ringing me in the morning to make sure I got up in time to do the call. This time we got it the other way around. Someone, the call was put in my calendar. I'm about to head up to Scotland. The call was put in my calendar, but it was put in the calendar for an hour earlier than the actual call was happening. So I am so caffeinated at this point. It's going to be a fun session no matter what happens. So welcome everybody. Before we dive in, I really want you all to jump onto chat and participate in this, because I'm going to be asking you a couple of questions, and rapid responses are required. So get into chat, figure out how it works. If you don't know, just look for the little chat bubble on Zoom. Drop in there, just say hi. Get your fingers used to typing again. And today, what we're going to do actually is we're going to I'm going to start with this poster, which is quite an old poster. It's from World War I. This is Field Marshal Lord Kitchener with a rather splendid moustache, and this as I said, this is a really famous poster. Your country needs you. And actually, today we're going to lower our standards a little bit. We're not going to go, this country needs you. It's your exec team needs you. And actually, by the end of the session, we're going to have butchered this poster even further. We're going to scramble it up a little bit. On the journey, we'll probably break a few eggs. And no doubt we're going to gently fry your brain a little bit as we go through here with some, as Louis said, some quite quirky observations, I hope. And if you're getting the feeling that there's some kind of strange theme starting to build in the intro, you're absolutely spot on. There's going to be a very strong theme throughout the presentation, which you'll pick up pretty quickly, I'm sure. So just quick reminder, put your fingers on the keyboard, make sure that you're ready to type, because I'm going to be asking you for questions, but we're going to move along. I'm going to ask you some questions, but we're going to move along at a fairly rapid lick. So here we go. And we're aiming for about a half an hour or so. That's my goal. So we'll be going quite quickly. So the inspiration for this was an article on Forbes, where they said that 92% of executives surveyed sees the PMO as a driving force of their transformation. Now, this is really interesting because other research has said that 72% of executives are calling the PMO into question. So one of these bits of research is wrong, but let's take this as a starting point. So if
Sorry, Stuart, are you supposed to be sharing your screen?
I am. Golly gosh. Thank you. You need to enable screen sharing.
All panelists. Yep, there you go.
There we go. All right, perfect. Right, can you see that now?
Yes.
Sorry, I thought I'd done that before we started. My apologies. Yeah. So clearly the execs want something from the PMO, and so the question is, what is it that they want? And I think so. There you go. That's the first question to you guys. what do you think it is that the executives want from you? So I'm going to pause for a second, and I'm hoping you're all going to jump onto chat and tell me what you think your executives want from you. Louise, feel free to join in here. All right, we've got keyboard paralysis. Reports on status. Yep. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Emin. Trusted advice, excellent. Dashboards, dashboards, dashboards. Okay, anything else? I mean, these are the kind of answers. I'm surprised. And then how they're performing, great. Good, good, good. This is all good. Lots of reporting going on here. Often when I ask that question, I get things about methodology, right? They want us to implement methodologies and things like that. And actually, I'm not sure all of this is exactly right. I think a lot of what people have put up here are the how, not the what. And so let's dig into that. But before we do, a little story. So a good friend of mine and really phenomenal consultant in the area of project prioritization told me a story about a meeting he had with a chief executive of one of the world's largest oil and gas companies. And the guy started talking about ducks. So next challenge for you all. Where are we? Come on, there we go. Okay, who can tell me which of those ducks is male? I'll give you a few seconds. Just type away. Which of those ducks is male? Gosh, what's Easton doing now? We're talking about ducks. He's mad. One with a curly tail. Oh, Louise! Absolutely nailed it. All right, it's a little harder with this one, but Louise got it. The curly tail. Right, this is how, so most breeds of ducks, they have a little curly tail. Now, you're all sitting there going, why on earth are we talking about ducks and boy ducks and girl ducks and curly tails and all this geeky stuff, right? Duck geeks, they exist, it's a thing. Well, this chief executive turned to my friend Roberto, and he said, I don't care if a duck is male or female. This is a quote. I don't care if the duck is male or female. I just want eggs. And in that one statement, the CEO, I think, has captured precisely what your executives want from the PMO. They just want eggs. They don't care how you get them. They don't care actually about status reports and Gantt charts and all of this stuff. What they care about is, are you giving me eggs? Now, fair warning, we're going to use eggs a lot through this presentation. And by the end of this, I want you to be so egged out. I want you tomorrow to walk into the office and just ask everyone, where are the eggs? What are the eggs? What are we going to do to deliver eggs? Right? And I want this to become, and you're the first audience, by the way, that I'm rolling this out to. But in a year from now, I want the entire PMO and project management industry to be talking about eggs. How do we deliver eggs to the executives? Right, so I'm going to use it throughout the presentation. So I think these are the 5 things that your executives really care about. And we're going to go through them one by one. So let's start with alignment. I'm going to go quickly through this. As Louise will tell you, I could talk about this particular one for several hours. So I'll try and restrain myself. But one of the things that the PMO can really help with is to get alignment of the portfolio with the goals of the business. And the executives find that difficult to do for reasons we'll dig into in a minute. PMs, it's just not their job. So the PMO is kind of uniquely positioned to support the process of prioritization and alignment of the portfolio. Now, alignment boils down to how do I get the most eggs, right? The most business value. How do I get the most eggs from my limited resources, right? So eggs equals business value, right? That's one of the key things to take away from this. So they only care about the eggs, and what they want to know is, how do I get the most eggs, the most business value from my limited resources? Now, there's a slight problem here, which is that actually, you know, your executives don't agree on what business value means and what's strategically important. And getting them aligned, it can be a real challenge. And the reason it's so hard is that your executives all have taken a different journey through life to get to where they are. So this guy, he thinks that eggs is all about getting off the island. He's been on that island for 3 years. He's sick of it. He just wants to get off the island, right? So for him, value means getting off the island. But for this guy, he's been stuck in this boat for 3 weeks. The only thing he's had to drink is recycled bodily fluids, and he really, really needs to get out of the boat, right? It's the same situation, but these two different people with different journeys through life are coming to completely opposite conclusions, and quite rightly so, because, you know, from their perspective, that makes sense. And this is what happens in the boardroom when people are sort of thinking about what projects should we do. And so part of what the executive team needs you to do is to help them build agreement and come to agreement about what it is they actually want to do. Now, this slide encompasses an hour's webinar, right? So we're going to whiz through it very quickly, and I apologize that I'm missing big chunks out. But there is some good news here, which is that there's lots of research into how to do this, how to do prioritization and strategic alignment properly. There's a methodology called AHP, Analytic Hierarchy Process, that comes out as a winner. If you want to know more about it, I would suggest you have a chat with Louise afterwards, because Louise is quite knowledgeable on AHP at this point and prioritization. But the takeaway is that, you know, there is a right way to do it, and you know, it gives you the chance to really support the executive team. One of the things that lots of people think about, forget about project selection, prioritization and selection, is that it's actually a process. Lots of executive teams think that actually it looks like a Noblinese contest. So when Louise was a lass, I'm sure she and her family would go on holiday to Southport or Blackpool or wherever it was, Louise.
North Wales.
North Wales.
We were poor, Stuart, but we got further than Southport.
Excellent. And you know, back in those days, and when everything was in black and white, you know, the great entertainment was always to get the dads to roll up their trouser legs, and then they'd have a competition to see who had the ugliest, knobbliest knees, right? And that's kind of how a lot of companies do project selection. They just bring the projects out one by one, they present them, and the executives choose which ones they like. And that's not a, you know, there's no process there. I often hear people say, oh, we've got a process. What we do is we put a slide together and then we present it to the execs and they choose. That's not a process, that's a meeting. And it doesn't give very good results. So, so prioritization needs to be a process, and it, like any other process in portfolio world, the PMO is the one that has the ability to go out and do it. And it's certainly not a spreadsheet, because spreadsheets tend to give you all sorts of strange artifacts like these plateau. And we've got blogs and things on the website telling you why that's a problem. So you know, don't be tempted just to try and use a spreadsheet. Don't be tempted to do the knobbly knees contest. You know, go out, learn about AHP. That's the methodology that works the best. There is another methodology that does a good job called DEA. But DEA is really complicated, so I always recommend AHP. And again, it is a structured process, and it's not just a meeting. So, you know, make sure you're using some kind of tool to keep track of all the different projects and where they are in the pipeline. This is before execution. This is the pipeline of projects coming in, so that you can control it and you can deliver a good quality process to the the executive team. And remember that it's all about figuring out how we give them the most eggs, the most business value for the constraints that we have. That's what the executive team needs from you, is a really clear statement. You know, when I asked what do the execs want, it was reports and things like that. So what they actually need is that really clear statement that they can trust, clear data that they can trust, that shows them how they're going to get the most value from the resources that they have. Now, for each section, I've put together a quick checklist, just a quick list of questions that you can use. I think Louise will be circulating the slides afterwards. And these are just questions that you can ask yourself to kind of help get into the right mindset. So I'm not going to go through the checklists, but just know that they're there. Value delivery. Okay, so alignment first, and what it is that we're aligning around is value. And so then it's important to actually focus on value delivery. So where is the value in this picture? Anyone want to have a guess? Fire away, come on, fingers on keyboards, super quick. Yay, Emin's right on it, right? So it's not the nest. The bird put a lot of effort into the nest. The bird's probably very proud of that nest, right? This is your beautiful project plan. But frankly, the nest is not important. Neither is the stick holding the nest up. It is the egg, as Emin pointed out. Right, so Emin's got it. Emin's going to walk into the office tomorrow and just start talking eggs at people, which I love. Right, and remember, it's always about the eggs. So if it's always about the eggs, let's put the egg at the center of the whole project life cycle, right? And make sure that we're focused at every step in the process on the egg, on the business value, not on project deliverables, not on creating artifacts, but ultimately on the eggs. So, for example, your business case isn't about just proving an ROI. It should be about defining what is the business value that we're going to achieve. What's the benefit we're going to achieve? Prioritization, as we just talked about, is about figuring out which are the best eggs for the organization. Project planning, let's put the egg at the center. Let's not start planning, you know, let's not start creating Gantt charts until we understand what do we need to deliver. You know, what are the capabilities, what's the functionality, whatever it is that we need to actually deliver to release the egg, right? And then work backwards from there. You know, risk management, let's be thinking about not how do I debottleneck this task, but let's turn risk management to be about how do I protect the egg? How do I protect the business value? And same thing with governance. Let's make governance reports about the egg, not about tasks, not about Gantt charts, burn down charts. Not interested. I just want to know, I just want to know, and your execs just want to know how you're going to deliver the value. Oddly enough, they don't even care about the projects. What they care about is the value that comes from the projects. They really don't care about that stuff. They just want to know when's breakfast. Okay, it's all about the eggs. So my recommendation is to turn the whole project planning and delivery cycle on a little bit on its head. And I hope some of you already do this, by the way. This isn't anything I've invented. But what I encourage you to do is to worry less about methodologies and focus more on value and how do we make sure we deliver that value. Okay, and again, another little checklist to help you do that. Now, this one is interesting, and you'll notice all of these are kind of interrelated, and of course they are because they're all about delivering eggs, right? So the next one is predictability. So I want you to imagine, right, it's an Australian audience. So this is Alan Joyce, CEO of Qantas, and he's just sent out an email. And it says, "Dear shareholders, please come over for an omelette at the end of Q3." Right, he's going to release his Q3 results. Right, that's the omelette, and he's going to feed the shareholders that omelette. Now, fingers on keyboards. What do you need to make an omelette? Yay, Evan, you are just hot. If you can, is there a way that you can just copy and paste eggs into every question I ask? Because it's probably going to be the answer. Absolutely, you need eggs, and Alan needs to know well in advance how many eggs he's going to get. Right? He may have requested 20 eggs, but he needs to know if he's going to get 20, 15, 10, 5. Because he needs to know how many people to invite around for an omelette. Or he needs to tell people, yeah, exactly. Or he needs to figure out, what else can I give them, right? If I can't give them omelette, what else can I give them, right? So what your executive team needs from you is predictability. Now, that's not the same as saying they need you to get 100% of projects delivered. Right? It's just as important that they know well in advance if something's not going to happen or if something is risky. And so we've got this little blog and data on the left. One of the things I'd recommend you do is go off, read that. This is based on PMI data, and it'll help you just sort of benchmark, where are you? Are you a top performer delivering 90% of your projects, delivering business value 90% of the time? Or are you one of the lower performers delivering the business value 30% of the time? Your executives need to know that. They need to know that if they've requested 50 projects, that only 10 of them are going to get delivered. And they also need to know that you're working to improve that 10, to make it 15, to make it 20, to make it 25, to make it 28. It's never going to be 30, but we could get up to 28. So that you can be clear, honest, and predictable. So in the first instance, I would suggest that predictability is more important than your actual project success rates, the triple constraint, on time, on budget, and so forth. Being open, transparent, and honest with the leadership team is absolutely key. And one of the most important aspects of being predictable is thinking about how you are going to protect your eggs, right? So we're going to jump across to here. Let me just mute that. There we go. And you see this guy is doing an egg and spoon assault course, which I think is just one of the coolest things ever. And if you watch his head, watch him really carefully as he's going around here. Every time he comes up to an obstacle, he looks at the next obstacle. And he's already thinking subconsciously, he's doing this completely subconsciously. He's thinking about, what do I need to do? Where do I need to put my hand to protect the egg? Oh, didn't do a great job there. And he's moving his arm out or in, he's turning the spoon to keep the egg, but he's doing it before the problems occur. He's anticipating what could damage the egg, and he's taking action early. And that's one of the most important things to be doing when you're working on projects, not to over rely on status reports and RAG reports and things like that, but to consciously examine every project and say, what are the things that could damage the value? I don't care if I miss a deliverable here or there. I care about, am I going to deliver the value? So there we go. That's enough of that silly little video. Right, let's get back to the slides. There we go. So predictability is about thinking ahead a little bit, and if you're getting lots of questions about where do you keep your ducks, what kinds of ducks, what do you feed them, that's like, show me all your Gantt charts, show me your resource plan, right? If you're getting questions like that's fundamentally usually because your execs don't trust you to deliver the eggs, right? They don't trust you to deliver the value. And so working on that predictability will let you establish yourself as a trusted partner, and will allow you to start to move forward with executive support to improve your success rates and so on and so forth. But first of all, you've got to be predictable. Right? If you're not predictable, you're not going to have the trust of the exec team. So again, another checklist. Feel free to use it to kind of just spawn some ideas moving forward. Now, this is, interestingly enough, the next one is where most of you kind of defaulted. And so as an exec myself, and Louise, I'm sure you've had this experience as well. We dread the meeting where we go in and someone starts throwing data at me. Oh my God, so much data, right? And it's a little bit like when you're driving, right? So I years ago, I used to have a Saab. My favorite, may they rest in peace. My favorite feature on the entire car was a little button on the dashboard that you could press at 1 o'clock in the morning when you were driving back from London to Manchester. And you're driving up the highway and you could press this little button and all the lights on the dashboard would go out except for the speedometer, because that's the only thing you need when you're cruising on the highway. And all the distractions disappeared. And so I could drive along. There was nothing to take my eye off the road ahead. And when I looked down, it was really clear what one piece of data I needed at that point in time was my speed. That's the only data I needed. Right? And I love that feature. Now compare that with the output from your typical PPM tool. Where do I look? Right? If I'm an exec, I probably don't even understand half of the data in here and what it means or how to interpret it. Right? So why would we use a big complicated dashboard to communicate this? Well, it comes back to this thing of trust. You know, going in through that dashboard is a proxy for trust. So my suggestion is, when it comes to good governance, that you again change the emphasis from outputs, because these dashboards are all about outputs. How many tasks have we completed? Which tasks are overdue? How are we doing budget versus actuals? It's all those kind of things, right? It's all, it's got nothing to do with eggs, right? So my suggestion is that you kind of flip the governance process around a little bit and start with something that looks a bit like this, right? So you've got your projects, you've got your timeline across the top, whether it's monthly or quarterly, it doesn't really matter. And then on that timeline, don't put things like, my deliverable for this is then, and my dependencies between projects look like this. Simply put on the eggs. So this is your forecast of when you're going to release business value to the business, because that's what the executives care about. They want to know, when am I going to get value released? They don't care when you go into beta testing. They really don't. They just want to know, when am I going to get the eggs? Okay. Now, of course, they are interested in some of that other stuff, but fundamentally, this is what they want to understand. And the more clarity you can give them, you're giving them that Saab dashboard, the more clarity you can give them, the more and make sure you do the predictability thing, right? So it's trustworthy clarity. The quicker and the smoother and the more value those governance meetings are going to deliver. And when you're in there, you can then change the discussion from these deliverables to the fact that I have 2 eggs at risk, right? And focus it on a specific reason for that and what's the specific help you need. And when you do that, your governance meetings kind of change a little bit, and they become more focused on what are we going to do and less focused on trying to understand all the data. Now, Moish, you make a really good point there that it's not just about trust. Some of them have, they're coming from different backgrounds and they want to see other data. And you're absolutely right. Of course they do. And I'm not saying don't ever show them other data. But what I am saying is, if you start with really clear, simple, egg-oriented, value-oriented dashboard, right? I don't even want to call it a dashboard. It's the transparent choice patented eggometer or something, right? That will really help you focus everyone on what's going on. And again, Emin, you raise a good point. Some people really want to dig into the details. And sometimes that is appropriate. Sometimes you need to do that. But I would put at the heart of your governance meeting the eggometer, right? The value map. And where you need to dig into the details, sometimes you're digging into details, and sometimes you're digging into the details. Actually, it's the next slide. Sometimes you're digging into the details because a particular exec is interested in that. Sometimes you're digging into the details because you're trying to problem solve. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But in terms of the core dashboard, I would suggest that very often, usually when execs are pushing you for that detail, it's not because, when they're asking you, what do you feed your ducks? When they're asking you, what breed of duck are you using? They're not really asking you those things. What they're really doing is saying that they're testing your knowledge, they're testing your data to see if they can trust it. Okay. And again, I've sat in so many executive meetings where this is the case, where the executive will say, I want this, I want this, I want this, right? I want this detail, I want this detail. And they don't really want the detail. What they want to know is that they can trust you. So if your governance meetings look like this today, you're not going to get to the egometer in one step. Yes, I mean, you're right. Some really are detail oriented. Most executives really aren't, and they really don't want to be. So if you've got 5 people in a room and one's detail oriented, just little caution is allowing that one person who's detail oriented to drag you into details, because you've then lost the other 4. So again, you're not going to get from detail oriented governance to the egometer in one leap. And again, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't have detail behind your eggs. What I'm suggesting is that you make the heart of the meeting, the heart of the discussion, a discussion about the eggs and when it's coming, what the risk to the eggs is, what the risks are, and what you may find, what you will probably find is that a lot of the requirement for detail over several cycles, a lot of that requirement for detail will just kind of fall away. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't need the detail. You do need the detail to manage the portfolio. But in the governance meeting, most times you don't necessarily want to go into that detail unless you're troubleshooting or something like that, right? In which case you may need the detail for that.
May I throw in an example, Stuart? Is that
Please
all right?
do, of course, yes.
So we went and did like a PMO rescue piece of work a couple of years ago for a big government agency, $300 million project over 3 years. And we actually replaced an organization who had struggled to meet the brief of the client in terms of providing a PMO service. When we first looked at the reports, it was 30 pages every month. They were continually in a reporting cycle. And one of the first meetings I had was, the exec saying to me, the project sponsor, who was a very senior leader, I get this 30-page report every month. It doesn't tell me anything. So we went back and we provided a 1-page dashboard report. Now, over time, that 1-page dashboard report grew to about 5 or 6 pages because they wanted extra information on specific areas of the program, which was large and complex, things like safety and testing stats and all very, legitimate requirements. But that first day when we provided that 1-page dashboard report and they had some faith in what it said was just a really sweet moment. So yeah, it was, it has to be accurate. So as you say, Stuart, it has to be, you can't just have the eggs in isolation. It has to be built on something. It has to be built off the backs of the ducks. But yeah, they don't want to know mostly. Once they've got confidence that it's accurate, and that's the key thing, confidence that it's accurate, then you can get straight back to eggs. So yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in because I've seen this happen a lot of times. Great
example. And it's so tempting to kind of default, it's the comfort zone. Actually, it's going to take us beautifully into the next topic. It's the comfort zone for many PMOs is to dig into that detail and to share it. But actually, your typical executive, I'm not saying every single executive, but your typical executive really doesn't want to have to worry about that. That's what you are for. is to isolate them from the detail. And that brings us to kind of the final point, which is about communication. So another little YouTubey thing. So, you know, we sometimes confuse words and data with communication, right? But I want you to watch this just for a few seconds. So there is a load of communication going on here, right? We all know exactly what's happening, right? She's trying to get through the door. The door's locked. She's trying to figure out what to do. Oh, she's found a key, and in it goes, right? And so there's lots of communication going on here with no words. And so your words, data, it's the communication that matters, not the words, not the data that you're presenting in a way. And so I want you to think about communicating in a way that is digestible for executives, because that's what they need from you. That's what they want from you. So would anybody like to guess who this is? I'm sure somebody is going to pick it up. Someone's going to know. And no, it is not a two-headed Elvis. It does look a bit like a two-headed Elvis, but it's not. Oh, we've got no guesses yet. All right, I'm going to dive in. This is Janus. He is the Roman god who guards the gate into heaven, Roman heaven, right? And he's the god of transitions, and as I say, the gatekeeper to the gods. Interestingly enough, he is also the reason that we call January January, because January is the month that transitions from one year to the next, and he's the god of transitions and beginnings, right? So January comes from the god Janus. But anyway, why am I talking about this? Well, you know, he's the gatekeeper. He's the guy in the middle, and you know, I think that what a lot of executives want from you is to be Janus, right? Because on one side, you've got the mortals, right? The mortals who live in project land, and they speak, you know, they speak Gantt chart and all that kind of good stuff, right? They speak projectees. But on this side of the map, well, we know what they speak, right? We speak eggs, we speak business, and actually we want lots of eggs, right, over here. And most executives don't have a really deep understanding of how projects work. And this language that people use on the project side actually gets in the way of communication to the executives quite often. And so, you know, one of the things that the executives need is for you to be Janus, to be the one who kind of acts as a filter, helps transition from projectees into business language. You know, so if you think about how that might work, you know, if you're coming back to an example, oh dear, that one slipped through. So we've got an example in prioritization. You know, what the gods want, what the executives want is, you know, here's what I want. Here's my business value I'm looking for. And then the minions in project land, right? Instead of them coming back saying, well, you know, here's my Gantt chart, here's this, here's my right? Instead of all this detail, what we want to communicate is, here's what's possible. Here's the information, so that you, Mr. Executive, you know, the gods up above can make their decision. And I think you guys nailed that right up front when I asked, what do the executives want? They want good information to make decisions, and good information isn't the same as lots of data. What they want is the insight to allow, you know, the information and the insight that allows them to make decisions, not necessarily data. And whenever you get to the level of data, you tend to fall back, you know, it's very tempting to fall back into kind of projecteese rather than speaking the language of the gods. All right. So, you know, talk eggs, talk language of the gods, whatever it may be. But the PMO is Janus. You're the gatekeeper. You're the one who needs to manage the transition from one domain, the project domain, into the executive domain. Really good question. how do you educate your executives to speak about eggs? Emin, I think the answer is you go and have a conversation with them. Very often what we find is that when you do, oddly enough, going right back to the beginning of the presentation, when you do project prioritization properly, part of that is to define what do we mean by eggs? And once you've done that, it usually becomes a lot easier for the executive team to be quite explicit about what the benefits are that they're looking for, the business impact that they're looking for. It's not a simple transition. It won't happen in a day, but as a PMO leader, you have the opportunity to start shaping that conversation. And one of the things that I always start with is trying to pick, don't do it all at once, but pick, 1 or 2 executives a week or a month and find some time with them and just ask them, what are you doing? What are your top 3 business goals? Not your top 3 projects or programs, but what are the top 3 things you're trying to achieve in business terms? And just keep asking why. Why is that important? What impact does that have on the business? And the more that you understand that, the more you understand how the business works, the easier it's going to be for you to help the business be clear about what the eggs are that they want. And the more you're going to be able to act as that Janus and translate that into projectees and to help the project managers put the egg at the center of the whole delivery cycle. So there's not a simple one that I can give you that you can wave and it'll solve everything. There's some hard work to be done, and it really starts by sitting down with, a great question, Emin, sitting down with the leaders and just asking, what are your top 3 business goals? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Why does that matter? What impact does it have? Who's affected by that? What impact does that have downstream on our customers? What impact does it have upstream on our suppliers? And just try and understand as much about the business as you can so that you can help organize the eggs. And very often what we see is that organizations have got into a mode of talking about projects in one particular way. And just because that's how we talk about them today, it doesn't mean that's how we ought to talk about them in the future. So, you can have a discussion about them. Once you understand a little bit about their goals and drivers, in your governance meetings, you can actually talk about eggs and just say, look, we want to really put eggs at the center of everything. Can you help us, by being clear in how you define the eggs when we're building the business case for a project? And it's just an education, it's a discussion, it's a learning journey. But like all learning journeys, if you have an idea of where you're trying to get to, it's much easier to get there. So a long answer to a simple question, a really insightful question, Emin. Thank you for that. Louise, do you have any thoughts on that? Because that is a difficult question.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'd like to touch on Mo's question, if that's all right as well. Mo said, isn't all of this similar to annual financial reporting? So you have to provide a lot of information because it's required in a regulatory sense, but, is it useful? My answer to that is it's absolutely the same. But what you will always find in an annual financial report is the exec summary at the beginning, which gives you a page or 2 of useful information, which I can almost guarantee is all that 95, 98% of people will ever read. So great pickup, exactly the same. Just going on to, sorry, Stuart.
No, that was a great analogy, really good analogy.
Yeah, it is. Just in terms of Aman's question, in terms of educating your execs, generally, if they understand that you understand what eggs are, they'll relax a little bit and they'll talk eggs too. Usually the only time you'll need to educate them on eggs is if they do have a project portfolio management background, they might want to talk in the detail. But generally, executives are all about the eggs. If they've been burnt, if they have trust issues, yes, you'll have to take them on a journey so they get confidence in you. and your ability to speak eggs. But I've typically not found it to be an issue. It's more about confidence than education, typically, not always. If they've got a project background, then yeah, you might have your work cut out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that brings us back to where we started. You know, our executive team needs you, but actually, fingers on keyboards. This is wrong. The executive team doesn't need you. What does the executive team need and want? Come on, you should all have it ready just to paste. Yay, Evan! Eggs, absolutely right. Now, I did toy with turning this from the exec team into the exec team, but I thought that was a pun too far. What do you think, Louise?
I'm surprised that you didn't.
There was a version of this that had
you've disappointed me, if I'm going to be really honest.
So there we go. That's my take, and you'll notice that you know, there's not a lot in here about methodologies or anything like that. The executives really don't care. They expect you to take care of all of that, and they just care about eggs. And so go talk about eggs.
I don't know about you, but I'm keen for an omelette tonight.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Stuart, and thank you guys for joining us. Apologies for the little problem we had at the beginning, but we will send round the full video shortly. Just a couple of things to mention. So please go and take a look at the Transparent Choice website. There's lots of really great resources there that will help you not only understand a bit more about eggs, but lots of good resources on AHP and prioritization generally. If you would like a demo of Transparent Choice, please feel free to reach out to myself or Waqar, and we're happy to take you through the tool. It is worth a look if you've got an interest in portfolio management. Again, please don't hesitate. Take a look at the Pledge Consulting website under the Insights section. We've got lots of great videos, previous webinars and blogs, and on our events page, we've also got details of any upcoming webinars. So with 2 minutes to go, I think we've got time for a final question or two, and then we might try and wrap it up for 5 o'clock, because I know people have got to be everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're living in a VUCA world.
Yeah.
So we need to educate our executives to use cognitive skills more in major programs, dealing with wicked problems, and they don't follow the rules of predictability. And to me, I think, again, this is about that communication thing. If you look in the checklists on predictability, one of the questions in there is, do you have a communication plan for communicating when there's something that's complicated or something that introduces risk into your project or your program? And again, I would counsel you with the executives to start that discussion with the eggs, so that they understand what value is at risk, and then get into the why, and then bring all those cognitive skills into play to help you problem solve. But you know, again, one of the things that I sometimes see is that I see PMOs and PMs taking risks to the executive team that actually you could solve on your own, right? Use the executive team as an executive team, not as a crutch to do your job, because it's your job to manage most of that risk and to figure out how to solve it. And so the stuff that, you know, and so it's like the guy doing the egg race, right? He wasn't waiting until the egg was falling off the spoon before he tried to fix it. He was looking ahead, he was anticipating trouble, and he was trying to avoid the trouble. And it only had to escalate. You know, you only have to escalate stuff, hopefully, if everything's going well, when things, you know, when you do need executive support and help. And of course, the more complex your program, the more dimensions there are to that challenge. But again, your executive team is not there to fix every problem for you. They're there to do the escalation stuff for you and make the tough decisions where you're trading off between different projects or programs. You're on mute, Louise.
good comment about dashboards being there to open up the conversation. They can be. They can also be there to provide all of the information that's required. It depends on the executive team that you're dealing with, and depends on what you're reporting, the phase in the project life cycle, the level of maturity of the organization. You know, when I'm starting off with a new executive team, you want to start off on the right foot. A dashboard is always my starting point. And a surprising amount of the time, it's also the end point. But it depends. Of course, it doesn't work 100% of the time, but it's a good starting point. So yes, it's a good place to open the conversation. But if you get it right, it might be the conversation.
And my experience is that, you know, there are some kinds of projects, you know, construction projects and things like that, where there are legal compliance things that you need to report on. That have got nothing to do with eggs, but you need to show that you've done the reporting to manage liability. Right? So the safety report example you gave earlier, Louise, was a good one. Right? So sometimes you're going to need data and detail in that dashboard just to show and to prove. It's like that audited accounts that we talked about earlier, to show that you are paying attention. Right? But generally, a really good starting point from an executive point of view, what the execs want from you is that, you know, top level, when are we getting the eggs? What is there anything that's making my eggs at risk? And if so, what do I need to do to fix it? So there we go. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you again. It's always a delight to talk to you, and thank you to everybody. I know we've got some fairly exotic locations in today, so thank you to all of you for joining us as well. And yeah, stay tuned. We'll have the video around it in the next day or so.
Cool, brilliant.
Thanks, Stuart.
Go talk about eggs.
Cheers. Bye now. Bye.